In some of the highest places of the world, in the most testing of terrains, where civilization barely exists, a convoy of adventurers drove in power-packed machines. It was a quest for pure adrenaline. With Mahindra Adventure began a journey of a lifetime on a road less travelled. This is the Monastery Escape. We were a convoy of 35 adventure enthusiasts on an expedition conducted by Mahindra Adventure. With their trail and driving expertise, we were sure that this trip was going to be the ultimate thrill. We took off on our journey to explore the Himalayas for experiences of complete contrasts, from testing terrains to tranquility and spirituality. It was our time to learn the art of getting lost.
I was yearning for a break from the city life, from the stress of the city, and to elude the monotony of it all. I mean, until then I had only heard about the thrill of driving through the mountains, and this trip was going to be my chance. I was sure that my first time in the mountains was going to be nothing less than life-changing.
The route took us from Delhi to Manali, via Rohtang to Jispa, followed by Baralachala and then a detour to Somoriri. The last leg of the journey would take us further north to Leh, Kargil and finally to Lamayuru and back to Leh.
So the mountains are something I've always loved. Ladakh has been one of those bucket list items for me. I knew it's going to be a challenging one. You have the altitude. You have the roads, which in many parts are not conducive. To start off with, we drove through the plains. I think it's a good way to warm up. It's a good way to get familiar with the vehicle because that's going to be your home for the next 2 weeks.
This sort of rain is not something that I expected. I didn't think that we would get this so early on. I thought I'd at least have a little bit of time for me to, you know, get used to the road, to get used to the Thar. Yo! Man, what is this? What?
This is just the starting.
What are you talking? This is just the starting? Andar aa jao, bahar shoot.
Okay, this is going to happen throughout the trip, yeah. It might get worse.
Okay. I mean, I could hardly see, yeah.
And these are good roads. Wait till the bad roads start and then you can't see.
Oh,
and
Jesus
if
Christ.
by chance, God forbid, there are landslides,
Yeah.
then is when the real
stuck.
adventure starts.
We touched the foothills of the Himalayas, and it was a stark difference how we were driving through the morning, where we were zipping in the 5th gear. We moved to now the 2nd and 3rd, you know, just shuffling through. You had barely space for 2 cars to pass by each other.
You look at one side, there's this side of the mountain, and the other is just a straight drop down. One wrong move, and well.
The night got on fast. By the time we entered the odd tunnel to Manali, we had already been on the road for 14 hours. Our very first day was the longest drive of the entire expedition. The next morning, we started our drive from Backpackers Mecca, Manali, to Jispa, our acclimatization stop. And en route, we cross our first mountain pass, Rohtang.
Well, we're getting higher, we're getting much higher in altitude, and the air is getting thinner, there's lesser oxygen, so it's a bit, you know, it's a bit harder for me to breathe.
And at that altitude, the main thing to remember is
keep yourself hydrated. It's very important. No, I don't drink cold water. They say don't drink cold water or hot water. just drink normal room temperature water. I mean, room temperature out here is colder than normal.
Rohtang Pass in the eastern Pir Panjal range is one of the busiest mountain passes in the north. But ironically, the name in Ladakhi means a pile of corpses. Not the most encouraging when driving through for the first time.
Congratulations to you guys, you guys have been just fantastic. Big ups.
Once we crossed Rohtang, I think that's when it got really challenging, and it kind of hit us that yes, now we are actually on an adventure, it's an expedition. I say that because that area is prone to landslides, and I think just a week before we were there, there had been landslides. There was rubble on the road. The cars performed beautifully. It was all low gear driving, it was bumpy. I think that's again where as a driver you need to know to keep that adequate distance between the car ahead of you, and you know, that's when I kind of felt the challenge of driving.
The valley opened up wide for the last bit of the day. We drove past Keelong, a small town where we got network for barely a minute before heading towards Jispa. Though an adrenaline-packed day was coming to a close, we were excited for the adventures coming up. Jispa, a small town in eastern Lahore Valley, is inaccessible in winters as it gets completely covered with snow, and the beauty of that scene is one for the imagination. The ever-smiling faces of this town do little to reveal the reality of the tough lives its humble residents lead. In our case though, a clear morning made for the perfect start to our day of acclimatization. A major cause of altitude sickness is going too high too fast. Acclimatization ensures that your body has time to adapt to the decrease in oxygen as you rise. While we adapted to thin air, the Mahindra team showed us how our vehicles could adapt to a dramatic change of terrain. The day had changed gears from restful to adrenaline charged.
All the Scorpios and Thars are four-wheel drives. It gives the vehicle incredible amount of torque and power, and also the ability to climb very, very extreme stuff. So to be able to handle that kind of power, you should understand its capabilities in a safe and controlled environment. This is what Jispa gives us.
They made us drive through the river, and it was a fantastic and unreal experience.
We started off towards our next destination, Somoriri, fairly early in the morning. All we could see was just a chain of headlights in the rearview mirror, and we were driving ahead towards Baralachla first.
In these valleys reside the Himalayan shepherds who fight the winds and lead their lives in true nomadic style. Staying in the upper slopes during summers, they descend into the valleys in winters. Our first world struggles were put into perspective in that single encounter. We rose about 6,000 feet in a little over 2 hours, crossing expanses beyond belief. We reached Surajtal, the third highest lake in India and the source of Bhaga river. the convoy moved ahead towards Baralachala, one of the highest motorable passes in the world.
We are now at one of the highest points, at the highest passes in the world. One of the highest passes in the world at Baralachala. This is close to about 16,000 feet up. It is cold, it's 2 degrees outside, and we are living it.
So we got back in our cars and started the descent down towards Sarchu, and there was black ice on the roads, and it's really important in black ice, at least for us, and we were told this many times over the radio, that don't hit your brakes unless you really have to, because bad things can happen if you hit your brakes when you're on ice. You can hydroplane and you could fall off the hills, and the Scorpios helped. Again, the traction of the tires and the beasts that they are, we were able to negotiate those difficult passages of driving pretty well. I can tell you that my car did hydroplane a little bit. I can tell you that I was a little scared. My stomach was turning a little bit, but I think that added to the adventure at the end of the day.
Shortly after, we crossed Sarchu at the border of Himachal Pradesh and Kashmir. This is a popular stopover for acclimatization on our route.
You're not designed to be here at this altitude and should not be exerting too much. So even if for 5 minutes you exert a little bit more than usual, or even your usual, you can get into trouble really quickly because oxygen levels are really low.
"21 hairpin bends of the treacherous Gata Loops lay in between us and another high motorable pass, Nakila. It's been said that years ago, during a heavy snowfall near Gata Loops, a truck broke down, leaving a stranded man to die over the course of a few days. When the highway opened the following year, people saw strange apparitions of a beggar asking for food and water near the loops, and the word spread. Soon, the locals set up a shrine in the man's honor and often left offerings of water and food there. Also, while driving through this terrain, one may often notice stones stacked atop each other. We spotted these at Nakila Pass. This is a common spiritual practice that symbolizes gratitude as well as wishes travelers well on their journey. It is this grandeur of nature that die-hard mountain travelers often speak of. A single visit to these tough, peaceful, overwhelming terrains are enough to justify the statement, the mountains always draw you back to them.
It's the same road, same passes. The treacherous nature of this expedition is what keeps pulling one back, and the road is home.
As we approached Moray Plains, we drove like beasts unleashed. If you're a motorhead like us, this meant 40 kilometers of pushing the pedal before heading into the dust and towards the much-awaited Somoriri. In the midst of absolutely nowhere was a quaint boarding school for young children where Tibetan was their medium of learning. Along with fellow adventurers Vikram and Sanobar, we went in to greet them with some dry fruits. The perfect nutrition and regulator of body temperature when in high altitude regions.
Moray Plains, as beautiful as it was, we post that we headed into a territory where there was almost no roads. Again, this is part of the expedition. This is what I came here for. Driving places where most cars and vehicles just would not be able to make it, but we were there. It was a tiring day, but I think as we approached Somoriri, I think all of that exhaustion died.
Somoriri treated us to a beautiful morning. We started a 7-hour drive from the high-altitude mountain lake to Leh via Changthang Plateau. The aqua shades of water and green pastures around added vibrance to the rest of the monochromatic brown desert land here. But change in these parts is the only thing permanent. The mountains soon changed form and turned an unexpected purple, adding to their enigma. With no roads to drive on, we were revving on gravel and rocks.
The car in front of you is spewing dust. Visibility almost reduces to zero. A lot of us had to put on our headlights just to be able to see a few meters ahead. I think that's the nature of this adventure, that you get to experience beautiful roads, you get to experience tough roads, landslides, and you go back with a holistic experience of driving.
As the sun set, we rolled back on the tarmac and zipped the stretch to Leh. A day of rest gave us the chance to visit the Hemis Monastery situated 45 kilometers from Leh. One of the world's highest settlements at 12,000 feet, it is the training center for lamas for the royal monasteries at Leh, She and Basgo. Its origins date back to the 11th century and was re-established in 1672 by the Ladakhi king Sengye Namgyal. Making the most of our free time, we visited the ancient monastery of the Drukpa lineage to attend the morning prayer just a day before the glorious Hemis festival. This festival is a celebration of the birth anniversary of the spiritual leader and founder of Tibet Tantric Buddhism, Guru Padmasambhava. To our good fortune, our visit coincided with their celebrated Rinpoche's holy attendance.
We think that we'd get to experience this.
Not in my lifetime. I've been to several monasteries before this, but this is probably the most fortunate one ever that we get to attend a prayer with the Rinpoche himself.
Yes, absolutely.
What a start to our break day that was. We drove 40 kilometers back towards Leh city, enjoying the panoramic views dotted with monasteries like Stakna and Thikse. Stakna, meaning the tiger's nose, is exactly what the hill resembles. And Thikse means in perfect order. Legend has it that a ritual cake that was offered by the monks was taken away by a crow and found placed at the hilltop in perfect order. Leh's predominant Buddhist practice is what gives this city its peaceful vibe. As we went full throttle, our convoy of Mahindra vehicles was hooked to these amazing roads. We followed the highway towards an older section, traversing loops as exciting as Gata. And just like that, we'd left the road behind, climbing higher and higher on mere dirt tracks with steep cliffs. After a quick descent, we were back on the tarmac. The convoy drove tighter than ever before. The mountains changed faces again, only this time more somber. The streets, with their war-torn homes and hamlets, were a constant reminder of the many wars that ravaged these lands. Driving along the roads that flanked the Suru River, we entered Kargil by evening. This place had a very different charm. It felt more like Kashmir than any other place we'd crossed. It was the last day of our expedition. The convoy was back on the meandering roads to Leh. But this was the monastery escape, and we simply couldn't miss visiting one of the oldest and prettiest monasteries of Lamayuru. Lamayuru is a place of magical legends, such as the legend of the monk who built it. Walking alone for days in search of something, he met a little boy in a small village that had provided him hospitality. He promised he would soon return and take him along on an epic journey. After landing in Lamayuru, he knew it was the place he would build his monastery. Returning back to the village, they all agreed to help him on his quest. A few years later, the Lamayuru stood like an imposing beauty amidst the moonscape of the region. We were greeted and blessed individually inside the old and sunlit prayer hall. The Guru there was kind enough to shed some light on us.
आप कुछ बता सकते हो मुझे how to overcome my fears?
ऐसा भी है ना, अगर हम कुछ ऐसा महसूस होता है, ऐसा कुछ फीलिंग आता है, मतलब डर रहा है, क्यों डर रहा है?
क्यों डर रहा है? हाँ। पहले ये जानना है कि डर क्यों आ रहा है?
क्यों आ रहा है? किससे आ रहा है? अकॉर्डिंग टू बुद्धिज्म हम कहेंगे तो फिर हम मेडिटेशन के लिए ज़रूरत है, थोड़ा सोचना, दिन में एक बार सोचना अगर शुरू करेंगे तो धीरे धीरे जो अपना जो फेयर होता है, मैं समझता हूँ कि उसको आप ख़त्म कर सकता है.
The thing about travel is that it makes you feel things that you'd never experience within the confines of your daily life. You see everything with a fresh pair of eyes, and it fills you with more than you could have imagined. Our journey had ended, but the brotherhood us adventurers had experienced would live on. We began as strangers, but would leave as each other's memories. An adventure expedition to the Himalayas can never be forgotten and is difficult to capture in words. This has been a surreal dream, and it will only get more monumental on our next life-changing adventure to the forbidden city of Lhasa and Everest Base Camp.